المركز الثقافي العربي.
Hello, everyone. I am Leila Goshi, a board member of the Arab Cultural Center in St. Louis, Missouri. And we are so pleased today to welcome Dr. Edward Kasule of St. Louis Community College, who is here to discuss immigration from African countries, the benefits and challenges of moving to St. Louis. And Dr. Kasule, as I said, is a professor at St. Louis Community College and also the Global Education Coordinator for the Forest Park campus. He is currently teaching Introduction to American Politics, Regional Geography, and International Relations. In the summer, Dr. Kasule helps organize and present at Northeastern University's Africa Summer Institute. Born in Uganda, Mr. Kasule or Dr. Kasule attended and graduated from Makerere University. Did I say that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Kampala, Uganda, with an undergraduate degree in social sciences. He was offered a scholarship by Rotary International to study communication at Illinois State University. Dr. Kasule continued with his graduate education at Purdue University, where he got his doctorate in political science. Dr. Kasule volunteers in several organizations serving immigrants and minority groups in both the St. Louis and Chicago area. He is particularly interested in understanding cultural differences between ethnic groups and facilitating intercultural communication. And so welcome, Edward, Dr. Kasule. Take it away.
Thank you, Leila.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And well, thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts on the benefits and challenges immigrants face in the St. Louis area. I also commend your organization and your interest in this topic. And I'd like to thank you for that on behalf of the African community in St. Louis. It is reassuring to know that your community cares about our community. And I think that such an attitude makes our city and the world in general a better place if we could all care about each other. So let me start by giving an overview of the size and diversity of the African people. Africa is more than 3 times the size of the United States. That's the continent of Africa. It's big. Many people don't really appreciate that based on what you hear in the news. It's difficult to know how big Africa is, but it's a huge continent. The size of Africa is often illustrated by showing the maps of several countries projected on the map of Africa. So usually there's a map that is online, and it shows that several countries can be fit in the continent of Africa, just to illustrate its size. The US, China, India, Italy, Germany, France, Spain, United Kingdom, Portugal, Eastern Europe, all these countries can fit size-wise on the continent of Africa. So that's how big the continent is. Africa itself is composed of 54 countries. Most countries in Africa have numerous cultures. So each of these 54 countries within themselves has more than 5 cultures. Most of them have like 20. So the diversity in itself, Africa is huge. Just to give you an example, there's between 1,000 to 2,000 languages, obviously depending on how the counting distinguishes between dialects and languages in Africa. So between 1,000 and 2,000. So that makes for about, 2,000 distinct cultures, right? So Africa is big. Given such a diverse background, one should be careful to address the people from African continent as a monolith. They are very distinct cultures. Many African cultures are as different from one another as they are from the American culture. Right? So You go to Africa, and if you are to speak in an African language, you'll find that depending on where you are, people will not really understand what you're talking about. So it's really a diverse continent. Foreign influences, such as colonial and religious influences, have bridged some of that gap. So you find that broadly, you could also categorize Africa based on these foreign influences. For instance, North Africa is primarily dominated by the Muslim faith. And so Arabic is generally spoken in North Africa. While south of the Sahara, it's mainly Christianity. And with this, there's also French and English influence. So you find that there's all these different aspects going on in Africa, whereby identity kind of shifts depending on where you are. Most of these differences are, however, ignorant or kind of can be put underneath when Africans move out of the continent. So Africans abroad, they generally kind of identify with each other. That's the interesting thing. And that's the one thing about sometimes identity, in that it is contextual. If you move from one context to another, your identity can shift. So you find that when Africans immigrate to the St. Louis area, then they act as a collective in certain situations. So even though there are many differences underneath, there's this general collective of African immigrants in St. Louis. So that's why I wanted to give that background just to give this notion that, yes, there's this generalization that these are African immigrants and they act together, but at some level, there's also some distinctions in terms of their identity. Excuse me. So let me start with the benefits. What are the benefits of in St. Louis area? So first, there's a strong cultural sense in the St. Louis area. St. Louis offers a vibrant cultural scene with festivals, events, museums, and cultural organizations that celebrate diversity. Immigrants from Africa can take advantage of these opportunities. So there's a lot of opportunities whereby Africans are exposed to the diversity in the United States. Events like the Festival of Nations and the St. Louis African Art Festival enable immigrants from Africa to showcase their cultures and to learn about other African cultures. So this is really beneficial. There's also several African community organizations in the St. Louis area. Most of these organizations are named after specific African countries, but they welcome anybody. So you find that Nigerians have their organizations, Kenyans have their organizations, Ugandans, so on and so forth. But they are all open to receive other Africans and even people from other continents and other cultures. Some example, one of the most prominent organization in the St. Louis area is known as Vitendo for Africa. And it's the most active. It was created by Kenyans and it's dominated by Kenyans, but it embraces all Africans. And it's very welcoming to all Africans. So these organizations and this diversity in St. Louis makes it very welcoming to African immigrants. And they feel at home when they see that there are people of different cultures, some of whom have similar problems to theirs. Second benefit in St. Louis is that it's very affordable. So St. Louis is a city, but at the same time, the cost of living is much more affordable than other big cities, for instance, like Chicago. So compared to other major cities, in the United States, St. Louis has a relatively affordable cost of living. Think of renting apartments or buying a home. St. Louis prices are much lower than those in Chicago. Another aspect related to the cost of living is the leisure activities in St. Louis. It's one of the major cities whereby certain aspects are free. For instance, we have the Science Center right next to our college. There's the zoo, museums, and most of these are free. And this is really essential to immigrants who are still trying to find their footing in terms of getting jobs and getting professions. So having areas where they can go to relax and explore the city, which are free and not paid for, that's a big benefit and a big attraction to St. Louis. The Forest Park area itself, Forest Park is a wonderful space, and many immigrants enjoy that space. So yeah, St. Louis is very affordable, and that makes it very attractive and a very good area for immigrants. The other aspect about St. Louis is job opportunities. St. Louis has a diverse economy with opportunities in fields such as healthcare, technology, education, and manufacturing. Immigrants with relevant skills and qualifications may find employment and opportunities in these sectors. And there are organizations that help immigrants essentially to find where these jobs are and help them connect with these companies. The International Institute is very active. I've already mentioned the Tender for Africa. These are organizations that are very helpful in assisting immigrants prepare for the job market and to look for employment. There are also government agencies that assist individuals looking for work. So yeah, job opportunities is great. And the diverse community itself in St. Louis is another major attraction, something that makes African immigrants comfortable. St. Louis is known for its diverse population, including a growing African immigrant community. According to the US Census, in 2022, there were 12,446 Africans in the St. Louis region. And this was up from 10,000 in 2017. So African population is growing rapidly in the St. Louis area, and this makes it more comfortable for immigrants to move to the St. Louis area. And this diversity is supported by certain organizations that I was impressed with. There's a church, it's up in the in North County, it's known as St. Norbert Catholic Church. And it provides services in Swahili, which is an African language. It also provides a service in French. When I first came to St. Louis, I was impressed by this, providing services in a language that Africans can identify with is really a powerful thing. And I met several Africans there when I went for the service from Kenya, from Ghana, Nigeria, Congo, Rwanda. And it's really, you get the African vibe. And the interesting thing about the service is that they have kind of a social gathering after the service where it's kind of a potluck and people bring in foods and stuff like that. So a good community atmosphere is felt. And this is a very, very good aspect in St. Louis. And I talked to some of the people, attending these services, and they expressed that it helps them deal with loneliness or depression. Some of the things that immigrants experience when they come to the United States. getting in such a gathering where, people can be reminded of their country and they can make connections and friends is very positive and very helpful. So such organizations are very helpful to immigrants. Another benefit in the St. Louis area is access to education. As an educator, that's something that I cannot miss. But St. Louis is home to several universities and colleges, which provide opportunities for further education and skill development. I've interacted with many African immigrants at the Forest Park campus of St. Louis Community College, and most of them joined to improve on their English, and some to actually learn English to start off with. So these colleges are very helpful. They get immigrants situated and they feel comfortable, especially if they are in classes where there are immigrants from other countries going through the same problems. So this is very helpful. And there are also other major colleges, WashU, SLU, whereby, again, there are more opportunities for immigrants to improve on their skills and to get better situated in the St. Louis area. So St. Louis is a city, but which has this feeling of closeness and community, unlike the big cities like Chicago, where you get lost in all the traffic and all the hustle and bustle. So that's a great positive for the St. Louis area, being a major city, but with a vibe of a small community, if you will. So let me move on to the challenges. What are the challenges that Africans face when they move to the St. Louis area? First is cultural adjustment. Most African cultures are anchored on a rural subsistence farming, and they differ significantly from the American culture that revolves around urban commercial activities. So African cultures are more traditional, whereby people, community is very important, and people within a neighborhood know each other, and they stop on their way to work, on their way to the farms, and they have conversations, which is much different in cities, city area like St. Louis. So that's one of the major aspects there, cultural adjustment. And many immigrants experience culture shock and difficulty adjusting to the customs and norms and the social dynamics of the St. Louis area. One of the biggest challenges African immigrants face centers on how they raise their children. So again, having been raised in that communal environment, once they move to a city like St. Louis, where the dynamics is much different, parents always have a challenge. Parents want to raise their children as they were raised, with the same norms and etc. But that becomes challenging because their kids who are born here or who move here when they're young, that is something that doesn't kind of work well. So that brings up a lot of conflict between parents and their children, especially during the teenage years. Because children are eager to assimilate, they kind of become distant from their parents, and there's kind of disagreement in terms of what norms. Should they go with the African norms or should they go with the American norms? There's always that friction. One of the problems I had with my kids raising them was teaching them my language. My first son, he learned the language, but as soon as he started going to preschool, he started losing the language because when he would go to school, it would be English. And when he came back home, there's not such a major conversation between us, the parents and the kids. So he slowly moved away from learning our language and adapted English. And then his siblings that came after, they just kind of did not even learn our language that much. So that's something that, you know, I really didn't feel good about, saying, man, I could not get my kids to learn my language. But now that they're older, they're starting to appreciate that. So they're starting to learn the language now. So that's one of the key things is the challenge of teaching children African culture. Another feature of American life that is difficult to adapt to is the culture of gun violence. So this is something that, again, is very difficult for Africans, especially many Africans are often escaping violence in their birth countries, and they're seeking for a safer environment. And they get to, American cities, and in some cases it's worse depending on where you live. So gun violence is another big aspect that, another challenge that Africans face. And the whole idea of civilians having guns, that's something that's different for Africans. In Africa, general civilians do not have guns, and it's usually the military and the police that carry guns. So to find that there's a culture where, it's okay to people have guns, that's something that some Africans, find challenging. Especially if they live in areas where there's, gun violence. So that's another cultural challenge that Africans have. Okay. The other interesting aspect here about cultural differences is students being able to effectively participate in their classes. And this again is a big part in terms of cultural differences in that African students are not as, trying to think of a good word, in that in class they are not as eager to participate. They're more laid back in class, and which is kind of different in the United States. In the United States, if a student knows something, they will quickly shoot their hand up to participate. Forming groups, they're eager to join that. But Africans are more reserved in that. I've talked with several African students, and this is part of the challenge they face in school. One student told me that it was difficult for her to get her classmates to discuss with them school work out of class. It was difficult to engage in group discussions outside class. Another student told me that, it's difficult for her to speak in class. She knows the material, but she doesn't feel comfortable. And it's made worse, she told me, by the fact that sometimes her accent is not, the American accent. So once she says something, and then maybe she's talking to an American student, and the American student says, "Excuse me, what did you say?" The confidence even goes lower. It's like, oh, well, they don't understand me. So it's one of those things between the accent and also a culture that is not as outgoing or aggressive, that becomes a problem for some of the African students. So those are cultural aspects. The other challenge that I notice the people I talk to is discrimination. So like many places, St. Louis has instances of discrimination. immigrants from Africa are sometimes discriminated against because of their immigrant status. This is mainly finding jobs, and other times it's because of race, racial discrimination. So discrimination based on immigration status is mostly felt when they are trying to get a job. The immigrants I talked to said they think many potential employers deny them jobs because of their accent. So they go for an interview and they feel that, they've answered the questions appropriately, but again, not being fully understood because of their accent by the interviewee, that they feel is what makes them unable to get jobs. So this is something that's a hindrance to some Africans. So the other aspect is the racial challenge, and many friends I talk to feel that this is a big problem they face. One immigrant I talked to told me that she felt that she was discriminated against mainly because of her race. Essentially, what she was doing a laundry whereby there's a service and you put your name out there and you can do laundry for people. So you go and collect the laundry, you wash it, fold it, and take it back to the customer. And the way she noticed that she was being discriminated against is that each of these customers have to rate your service in the app. Did you provide a good service, or your service was not good? Well, she said that in people rating her, they said that she was overcounting. In other words, you're supposed to measure the pound of laundry. They pay by the pound. And what some of her customers would say is that, oh, she put 20 pounds instead of 15. And which, she's like, why would I lie? Suddenly they just wanted to pay less because, they pay based on the number of pounds. So they would cheat her by saying that the laundry you did for me was 15 pounds and you were trying to say it's 20 pounds. And she would not contest this, saying, it's a hassle trying to fight over this. So she would just let it slide by. But part of her feeling was that, well, this is partly because of my race, and they felt that they could get away with it, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the aspects that I was like, wow, this is something that's major. And she said, in other gig economy, whereby, again, they rate your service on an app, some of those, she felt that she was slighted by the people. So that's, something that was interesting. Another immigrant I talked to, she was she was upset when she told me this story. She was like, well, when I moved to St. Louis, I was lonely. I didn't have anybody to talk to. She has 2 kids. And so one of the ways, and her husband was working, so the husband would go to work in the morning and come back in the evening. So the entire day, the mom was at home with the kids. So she felt really lonely, depressed. So once in a while, she said, you know what, I'll just go to the library and meet people, make friends, etc. Well, she went to the library and her kids started playing with other kids at the library. And what really upset her is that as soon as the mom saw her kids, the mom was white, saw her kids, white kids, playing with this woman's kids, she came and got her kids and they left. And she really, really felt, she's like, oh yeah, that really broke my heart. It's like, well, this is the one place I thought I would get friends and engage in community. And she wasn't happy the way that went down. So there are instances of racism, and some of it is more of perception, but it still, gets to people. The other challenge is transportation. Certainly, St. Louis is public transportation is not a great aspect in St. Louis, and without a good public transportation system, most of the benefits I talked about, a few minutes ago, essentially are not taken advantage of by immigrants, because without public transportation, it would be hard to go for a job interview. It would be hard to take on a job that is in an area where there's no public transportation. So public transportation is a big thing, especially for immigrants. Some of them do not have cars, cannot drive. So this really becomes a handicap for immigrants not having a good public transportation system. So that's a big thing, a big challenge. Excuse me. Then there is the legal aspect and immigration issues. All immigrants, this is one of the big things that they face, and this is not in St. Louis alone, but wherever immigrants are, the system is so complicated, getting papers and everything worked out. It definitely requires an attorney, and if you don't have sufficient incomes, it's very difficult to retain an attorney. So this is one of the issues that generally comes up with all immigrants, how to navigate the system and how to get everything worked out. There's one student I talked to, and she was really frustrated because, for one, as an immigrant, especially she as a student, you are limited in what type of jobs you can work and how many hours you can work. And yet she had to try to make enough money to sustain herself, pay her tuition, rent, food, etc. So it's this constantly juggling in terms of how do I best get enough money to sustain myself, and how do I get attorneys to advise me appropriately and to keep up with all the paperwork. So legal issues, especially immigration issues, are a major challenge, but this is not limited to St. Louis, but it is something that's in general in the United States. So those are some of the benefits and challenges that immigrants from Africa face in the St. Louis area.
Okay, thank you, Edward. That was very interesting, and I actually thought of a couple of questions. First, I'll ask our audience, are there any questions you have for Edward before I ask mine? And you can go ahead and talk if you want.
Yes, hello. First
Yes.
of all, we need appreciate for the Professor Edwards for the times and everything's what he have these lectures, and we really appreciate it. And when Professor Edward, he just like mentioned as Arab Culture Center, and we interesting for that. But the Arab Culture Center, as you know, we have like 12 country. They have like the first language Arabic. In Africa, this is the first of all. And before 1930, it was the Swahili language in the same alphabet Arabic. And 40 to 60% from Swahili language is coming from Arabic. And we interesting for this is because this is our mission and our goal as Arabic Culture Center, because a lot of this is Arabic speaking coming from Africa, and they joined us also. We have Sudan, we have Somal, we have Djibouti, we have Egypt, we have a lot of this is coming from Africa. And as you mentioned, this is what the problems for all these immigrant or refugees. This is the same for our refugees or immigrant when they came for the St. Louis city. They have the same problems, and we have this same issue. My just like I need to ask one questions now, as like we have the history, and this is like the people are the coming from Africa, how this is like people from Africa is make something different to our city, because we need these famous name who's working in the St. Louis, Missouri. If we get like some spot on these names, and especially for the Black History Month, and this is we can make this is like knowledge for the public, for everyone to knows these names to everyone. And if we can continue for after this answer, more questions, if you can, yeah, because I saw this is multiple questions there also. Okay, go ahead, Professor Laila or Professor Edward. Thank you for the time and everything.
Okay. Thank you for the comment on that history. Certainly, let me first go with the history of Swahili, because I talk about this quite a bit whenever I give talks about Africa. Swahili essentially, like you said, was a combination of African language and Arabic, mainly on the east coast of Africa, like you said, Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania. That's where the Swahili culture came from. And I think it's the most widely spoken language because it's spoken in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Zaire, and Rwanda and Burundi. So it is widely spoken. Interesting story about this is that one time I gave a talk, in fact, way back, it must have been 2015, I think it's Lyra who organized this talk on one of our campuses, and I was wearing my traditional cloth. And the way we wear in where I come from is that it's called a kanzu. It's a white kind of outfit, which Muslims wear when they go to prayer. I think it's worn in Arabic areas. So we wear this and then put on a blazer on top. So I put this on, and certain African American asked me and said, "Wow, why did you have to wear that? That's not part of your culture." And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "This is my culture." So I went to explain to him, and I said, my tribe, they adopted this when people from Saudi Arabia first came to Africa, and we adopted this. Now it's part of our culture. So it's one of those things whereby there's so much integration between the Arabic culture and the African culture in that. So, and I think you had talked about highlighting important people from Africa. And yes, I agree with that. There are several important names in history which we can highlight. I mean, off the top of my head, trying to think, the former president of South Africa who died, the name has escaped. But these are some of big names that are known throughout the world. And yes, we can get together, not only highlight the names, but also how these cultures work together in history, and how we should continue working together and build on that foundation to show the brotherhood between those cultures. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, the Swahili language also in Yemen, in Oman, they speak in Swahili.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, they speak Swahili. And before like 1930, before the second international war, it was like just Arabic alphabet in Swahili language. After this is colonized and colonizer, this is some country in Africa is coming like this is Latin letter or Latin alphabet, and they switched between Arabic alphabet to like English or French alphabet.
Wow.
This is yeah, and this is 40 to 60 like percent for this is Swahili is coming the same Arabic because they spoke the same like word, but they like write these like terminal language in English or French. And this is we interesting because we are part of you are like a continent. We are part in your culture. We are
Yes.
part for this. Yeah, we are together. We need to
Yes.
unite it to be stand together. That's what we need. And I just spoke with the, I think is a Mr. Michael. He's like a African Culture Center or Education Center in St. Louis. And I
Hmm.
was a couple days ago with him in his office in church, and he
Hmm.
promised to like come. This is in that meeting. I don't know if he will join or not because he's very interesting about this, and we can have a lot of things. I mean, also again for Arabic country or the country who's have like Arabic language speaking, there we have 22 country, 10 on Asia and 12 in Africa. This is the
Oh,
majority in Africa.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Wow.
if we're talking about population, this is we have 1.2 billion in Africa, people like live in Africa. And how this Arabic people or Arabic country in Africa, we have like more 100 to 50 million people. That means the quarter of this is like Africa, they speak in Arabic, and another quarter or half they speak in Swahili. This is part of Arabic. This is
Yes.
that
Yes.
mean
Yes.
we are together. We have sharing the same culture. We sharing a lot of things, and I really
Yes.
appreciate it for your attending and everything. I mean, if anyone and Professor Layla, if anyone have a question, and if you have questions, we are here also.
Thank you. I would like to start with thanking the professor for this great lecture. And thank you for giving me the background for the needs of the African immigrants, because I just recently hired a chemist from Gambia. And during the interview, you could tell he's very sharp and he will be a very good hard worker. So he mentioned that he wanted to bring his family over here. He just obtained his green card. He's been in the country maybe 3 years. Is there an African place where he can go where they help him with a like a lawyer or provide like low cost services so he can bring his family here? Because I really would like to help him out.
Right, right. Yeah, certainly, yes. There should be places, and I can ask around to give you the correct information. I know of people. I can talk to Vitendo for Africa, and then find out the right place where he can go and get help. But there should be help somewhere he can go and get assistance with that. But so
thank you so much. He's
yeah,
also
Leila,
planning to get his PhD in the future too. So he's really, really ambitious.
good, good, good. Yeah, Leila can share my contact with you, and I will ask around, and then I will connect with you and let you know.
Great. Highly appreciate it.
Right. Thank you.
Hi, Edward, I did want to ask, and I think I've mentioned this before, but just so discussions among our group. The organization that Dr. Abdel Fattah just referenced is called the African Diaspora Center, and they're in North County, I think.
Okay.
But I think their focus is more the Black American community, the community long time established in St. Louis. And I'm just curious, you said in terms of culture shock, you know, an immigrant from an African country will have a different personal and family history, you know, but yet you might be expected to know the US country's history. So have you ever encountered situations like that where people expect you to remember 1970 in the US, but you're thinking 1970 in Uganda, you know? You know what I mean?
You mean in terms of somebody expecting you to remember what happened in 1970 in Uganda or in the United States?
In the United States.
In the United,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, it's one of those things where they will expect the expectations are much higher than it's like, well, you know, if somebody is migrating to from Africa, how would they know the history of the United States in the 1970s,
Right.
whereby even some Americans are not familiar with that.
That's true
So,
too. That's true.
right.
Right.
So, yeah, it's, I think the expectations are higher on immigrants, especially, you know, taking on the test and everything like that. It's like, well, you know, these are new people that have to learn the culture and everything. So,
Right.
so yeah. So what, it was more like expecting Africans to know U.S. history.
Mhm.
Was that part of your question?
Well, like what I meant was, you know, in terms of civil rights
Yeah.
for uh for everyone, not just Black Americans, but all, you know, everyone. There are particular histories that people think about all the time, like the bus boycotts and
Mhm.
this, and but if you're coming in fresh,
Yes.
and it's like you might need to have that cultural memory, but you don't have that cultural memory yet.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And I think sometimes that's where there's sometimes friction between African immigrants and African Americans. And I think that friction comes about by some Africans not knowing and fully appreciating the history of the African Americans, like you mentioned. And the African Americans not knowing that these Africans do not know that history, you know, because for some reason, I think African Americans would expect Africans to know all this history, the civil rights. And for Africans, like, why would I know about the civil rights if I'm just coming here? So my feeling is that sometimes the friction between African immigrants and African Americans is not knowing the history. Africans, on the part of Africans who are visiting, coming here, not knowing the history of the civil rights movement and what the African Americans have gone through, and fully appreciating that. And such that, you know, because if you're familiar with that history, then you know that some of what's going on in the African American community is because of that history. So yeah, I think that's a major problem, which I think at some point both communities need to be educated about the other. Yes.
And I had one more question, but does anyone
Sure.
else have a question first? Okay, well, I wanted to go back to something you said about the French and French language and English language.
Yes.
But you know, reading the headlines, I've learned that China has, and maybe we've discussed this before, but China has a growing influence in Africa. So has the Chinese language begun being taught in African countries, or what's happening?
Yes, the Chinese are setting up culture centers. I know when I was growing up, the United States was the dominant country that at their embassy, they had these culture centers where you go and browse through magazines and sometimes watch shows, and all an effort to export the American culture into Africa. And it was very, very successful. And the French did the same. So now the Chinese are on a mission. They're doing the same. They are starting to provide incentives for people to learn Mandarin and providing scholarships for people to go to China. Yes, so it's a real big influence. The limitation the Chinese have is that English was first of all, as being colonized by the British. Starting in high school, we used to learn English, so there was already a foundation for us when the America tried to export American culture. For China, it's a bigger challenge because they have to start from ground zero to teach. But certainly, there's a concerted effort to teach Mandarin, and most of it is done through scholarships. If you are able to say a few Chinese words, then your ability or your opportunities to get a scholarship to China significantly increase. So yeah, and that's the big competition right now on the continent, is that China is trying to move in. The big problem, though, is that China also has a big population, and once they set up industries, they want to bring their own workers. And Africans are not very happy about that because they feel at least the jobs should be given to Africans instead of the jobs being given to Chinese people. So that's the interesting thing with regard to what's going on between China and African countries.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize they wanted to bring their own workers. Okay,
Yes, that's one of the big things, that yes, they set up industries, but also they bring as many workers as they can. So it kind of defeats the purpose, because most African countries would prefer for other countries to set up industries to employ Africans. And that's kind of not that's what the Europeans and the Americans used to do for the most part. The upper management would be American or European, and then the rest would be Africans. And that's how they benefited. But China is kind of using a different model in that they bring a good number of the workers, the employees from China. Yeah.
Is that this is Talal? Can I ask a question?
Oh yes, please.
So, Doctor, are we talking about new colonization now from China?
That's kind of what the debate is. The debate is on the African continent is that who would you prefer? Would you prefer the European colonizers or the Chinese colonizers? And they each have different models. And the way the debate has gone is that the European, and with European I include America, they come with conditions. They say, we are going to invest this money into your country, into your economy, but you must follow. You must obey these things, rights and everything. These are the things you have to fulfill in order for us to keep investing in your country. China comes in, and Russia not so much, but also the same model. They come in and say, hey, we are loaning you this money. It's up to you. Do whatever you want. The key thing is you've got to pay back our money. And if you don't pay back, they put very, very stringent conditions, but there are no conditions attached to that money. So that's the debate going on in Africa, whereby some African leaders prefer the Chinese model. It's like, hey, I don't want all these conditions that are put by the United States on me, that I have to behave this way and this way. I prefer the Chinese. They just give me the money and they just wait for me to pay it back. So, but yes, the way some people are looking at it is that, yeah, this is another way, another form of colonialism, you know. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Interesting. So by behavior, you mean like maybe handling, well, just handling anything a certain way.
Yes, it's more about human rights. It's more about human rights and democracy. You've got to, you know, if you're the leader, you've got to have a democratic system. You have got to observe human rights. You have to observe all these things. And so that's more the conditions that are required by the West. Meanwhile, China says those are your affairs. We are not going to interfere with your affairs. It's all up to you. Just pay us back.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I learned a lot. So, well, Dr. Kasule, thank you for this. This has been very educational and gives us some ideas going forward in St. Louis for additional programming. And hopefully you'll be back with us in a future event. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed the questions, and I certainly look forward to the partnership with you guys and the African community. Certainly, there's a lot of history on which we can build this partnership, and it's it's always good once you are in the diaspora to create as many partnerships as possible. And thank you for the questions. Certainly educational from you guys, and I've also picked up quite a few things. I didn't know that there are Swahili speakers on the Arabian Peninsula, so that's something like, wow, good to know, good to know. So thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.